Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is ARLENE WashBURN, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
Everyone, welcome back to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, where we support aspiring and experienced matchmakers and the clients they serve. And I'm your host, ARLENE Washburn. And now, before we dive into today's episode, I want to make something very clear. We're going to talk about women's health. And before any of you men that are tuning in run for the hills, I need you to listen closely. If you have a mother, a sister, a daughter, a girlfriend, a wife, a female coworker, or a client, this information affects you too. We're talking about the changes women experience between 40 and 64 years old and how it impacts everything from mental clarity to libido to their ability to feel confident and vibrant again. So this is personal for me too. I had thyroid cancer years ago, and I was told I couldn't do bioidentical hormone therapy because of some study that had scared me and everybody else. But here's the kicker. That study turns out it was wrong, and now I'm learning just how much we've been misled and how many women are suffering unnecessarily. So I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Manna Semby to the show. She is a licensed naturopathic doctor, certified functional medicine practitioner, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Aruna Personalized Medicine. She is on a mission to help high achieving women reclaim their energy, strength, and joy, especially during midlife transitions. Dr. Manna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arlene. I'm thrilled to be here.
I am so excited to have this conversation. It's so funny. I was just in a group of love industry professionals. Some were coaches, some were matchmakers. And one of the matchmakers asked the question, how should we be talking to our female clients? She was mentioning that she had a client who really didn't have much of a libido and really wanted to meet someone who was not super excited about sex. And so I said to her, you better tune in because that's going to be the first question that I ask before we jump into anything else.
It's a very timely question. It is so important. The sexual health and libido are so important. Of course, it's every woman's choice, how they want to live their life. But sexual health is one thing that gets ignored a lot as women get into menopause and beyond. One of the things that happens is the change in the vulvovaginal area. A huge change occurs in this area. Our immune system in the area changes. Our sensitivity changes. Our ability to ward off infections changes. And with all this discomfort, of course, it's no surprise that women are not interested in sex anymore. And not only this, menopause and this transition brings so many things like weight gain, poor sleep, anxiety, just having a short fuse, just being impatient. Everything becomes harder. And so, combined with all of that, these vaginal symptoms, there's actually a name for it, and we call it the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Up to 70% of women that go through menopause have this condition, and yet we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it because somehow there is a stigma or some perhaps shame associated with talking about this. But if we don't talk about it, then we don't get women the solutions that can absolutely help them live normal, healthy, vibrant lives. So I'm glad this is the first question we started off with, because the American Urological Association published long awaited guidelines just 2 months ago, just in April, where they talked about vaginal hormones and their importance to every woman. So the bottom line is your 98-year-old grandmother needs to be on vaginal hormones, and so do you. Okay.
Wow. That is so interesting. So at what age does this actually begin? When do women have to get onto this vaginal hormone, for example?
So it really varies from woman to woman. The average age of menopause is about 51, but the transition to menopause can begin 10 years before that. So, what women have to know is what do they need to look out for, and then just be monitoring themselves. And when they feel something is not right, when they're feeling any vaginal discomfort, if there is pain with sex, if there's dryness, itching, infections, that you've let it slide too long. So at the first sign of any discomfort, consult with a doctor who's menopause literate and get started with vaginal hormones. And this can be in your 40s,
Hmm.
right? So because the another thing I want to say is that the lube can only go so far. There is a time when it doesn't work at all. And so you need either vaginal estrogen or DHEA or perhaps both. And then you can also use the other things, but those things are not going to fix anything. And even temporarily, they may not help a lot. So getting the hormones replenished in the vaginal area is super important.
Well, I guess my question is then, if someone has let this time pass, now they're in their 50s, reaching 60, does it make sense for them to still do this, go to a doctor and get the vaginal hormones, or is it too late?
Um, it's never too late.
Mm,
The answer is basically yes. You should go and get started as soon as you can.
I love this. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Why do you focus on this age range specifically, 40 to 60 into the
Yeah, I feel like in my life, I had an awakening at this time. Like, it's not like, I had a whole other career before I changed my career and came into the world of medicine and functional medicine. I was in finance. I was on Wall Street. I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I worked at Goldman Sachs. So my life was completely different. And then a few health related challenges in my family where medicine said there's nothing we can do. And I was like, well, that's not a good answer. So I kind of took matters in my own hand, started to do a lot of research, and then found that there are answers, but you have to look for them because it may not be the answer that every doctor or your doctor can give you, but answers do exist. So I started off finding answers for my children. And then later, during midlife, during my own journey through perimenopause and menopause and extreme burnout and then breast cancer, and then my whole experience with the industry of medicine of how my surgeon is telling me you should not be on hormones because you are choosing quality of life over longevity. And if she was right, I would think even then I would say, okay, it's my choice, it's my prerogative to choose quality of life if I so want. But she was wrong. She was incorrect. This whole fear that has been there, that if you have breast cancer, a history of breast cancer in your family or in your own life, that you cannot take hormones is incorrect. So for me, it just became this waking up moment. Is like, my gosh, women don't know this, and we go through so much at midlife and nobody tells us, nobody prepares us for this. We just end up in menopause unprepared, and everything is changing in our life, right? Like, so how is that even a situation that we are in, but somehow we are in that situation? So I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
I am so grateful that you are doing this, and there's a sprinkle of other doctors out there that are pretty well known, because I feel that even though the population is a little over 50% more women than men, and yet we don't talk about women's health. And I spent 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and a lot of the drugs were tested, primarily for men, and a lot of the advances in medicine are really geared towards men. And it's a shame because, these men love women, and they have mothers and sisters and all the list that I set initially. And then when you're married to a woman or dating someone who has no interest in sex, has no libido, has a very dry vaginal area. I mean, I went to a conference 3 years ago and was speaking to a colleague who is in the same age range as me. I'll be 59 this year. And the topic of vaginal dryness came up, and all the young girls were sitting around asking, like, what are you talking about? Because this is like taboo subject, and it's just medicine. It's our bodies. I mean, if you're talking about your ear, you're talking about your nose, it wouldn't be that, that big a deal, but just because it's the vaginal area, and it's such a disservice what was done with that misinformation about the hormone therapy, because it just ruins women's lives. And we're going to get into it because we're going to talk about brain fog, which I think I'm in the middle of, aside from my recent accident that I had. I fell off an e-bike. I'm definitely in the brain fog mode right now. I'm forgetting things, and I took your quiz, but we'll get into that later. But
Yeah.
yeah, speaking a little bit more about this area, then it's really not just aging. It's really about making sure you're taking care of yourself with these hormones that have been depleted over time.
Yes. So I will start off by saying that the medical neglect of women's health is criminal.
Mm-hmm.
That is what has happened in the world for decades. And I think it's absolutely criminal that women's health has been so ignored. You can see it right from the beginning, right from a woman goes into puberty, a young girl. We are going into puberty younger and younger. They're like 8 and 9 and 10-year-old girls starting puberty, right? Okay. So what happens? Many times these girls have difficult periods, cramping, pain, and they get put on birth control right from the beginning. So, what we do is instead of trying to understand a woman's endocrinology, a woman's hormonal system right from the beginning, we think it convenient to shut it down with oral contraceptives. We shut it down until the time she's ready to have a baby, probably in her early 30s or late 30s. And then a lot of women, there is this problem of infertility. Now, male infertility is a big problem as well. But because the female system hasn't been allowed to fully develop because we shut it down with contraceptives, there is that challenge, right? Okay. And then after that, when a woman goes into menopause, at that time, we tell women, oh, these hormones are dangerous. Meanwhile, we put women on much higher doses of synthetic hormones for decades without thinking twice about it. And now at midlife, when they really need the hormones to feel like themselves again, we have avoided that. We have refused women these hormones, which are life giving. You cannot be well psychologically or physiologically if your hormones are not at normal levels.
Mm.
So I think that what has happened in the world is absolutely unacceptable. The other thing is the education around menopause is non existent. I'm very glad for the few loud voices that have big megaphones today and that are talking about this. But I feel that for the average woman to get the help that she needs and get the information and education that she needs, a lot more needs to be done. So we need to understand menopause as what it is. Menopause is ovarian failure.
Mm.
Every woman goes through ovarian failure at about the age of 50. When your ovaries fail, you are no longer producing estrogen or progesterone. These hormones are necessary for the efficient and optimal functioning of every organ in your body, your brain, your heart, your sexual organs, your bones, your immune system, your mental, emotional well being. So, if you don't have these hormones on board, how can we conceive of a woman, of a human being feeling normal? Because these things that are critical to every um, every function, every organ of the body functioning optimally. If we don't have that on board, how can we be fully healthy? We cannot be. So it's like fascinating to me that the population of the world is like 51% female, and yet we haven't been part of decision making. We haven't been part because it has just been said, oh, women have this hormonal system and we need to test it in a simple, straightforward system. We need to test our drugs, our clinical trials, all of that in the system. And as a result, women always got short shrifted,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now it is up to the women, really. it is up to women, it's up to us to say, this has to change. We do not accept the status quo any longer. We need resources, we need help. And there's also this internalized bias, right? Like we grew up in a world where women just didn't have the rights, right? Until the 70s, you couldn't buy a house in your own name without a male cosigner. That's in my lifetime, right? So it's like this is the world we have grown up in. And there is a long, long road for women to travel before there is true equal opportunity for men and women. So I feel that all women need to know that the power is in our hands and we need to use it. We need to use it wisely. We need to speak up. We need to ask for a right for healthcare, for well being, for education, for supporting each other.
Yeah. And it's not just us learning. I think that the standard of care and what's being taught to doctors needs to change. I think it starts in the educational system too, because I believe that there's a lot of misinformation coming from some practitioners who haven't really spent the time, who haven't really learned. I remember years ago, maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago, there was this big article in the New York Times about the clitoris being this huge thing that people think is a little thing, right? And how doctors were damaging women's clitoris when during childbirth with clamps and not really fully understanding. I mean, this is an obstetrician. Like, how do you not, or a pedi, whatever, an OBGYN. Like, I mean, I just feel that it's an overhaul of everybody needs to learn and change, because this affects everybody. If again, it's like it's not just a woman problem, it's an everybody problem, because if you have a woman in your life who now has brain fog or is irritable or doesn't want to have sex, all those things are going to impact the, I'm speaking heteronormative, but still it doesn't matter, it's going to impact everybody. And the other thing I learned years ago, that when women take birth control, it changes how they view, for example, if they're in the dating world, they might date someone who maybe doesn't have as masculine features, etc. And then when she gets off the birth control, she's going to be looking at this person and saying, why am I with this guy? Because he is not my type, because your hormones are not functioning normally. They're it's a synthetic hormone that you have going through your body. And so now you come out of that fog and now you are really who you are. And you're in a situation where you're with someone that is not the person that you want to be with. This is something I learned years ago from a physician. What are your thoughts on that?
So you've raised a lot of good points. So let me start at the beginning. The first thing is the doctors are not educated. Women are not educated, but doctors are not educated. And why is that the case? That is the case because until the WHI study was published in, I think, 2002, there plenty of women were on hormones. Doctors were writing prescription for hormones, and so doctors were prescribing. And when the study came out, and yes, it is correct that the study was done incorrectly, interpreted incorrectly, and then the information that still is making the rounds is incorrect. Like the what can I say? The information mill of the WHI is still spinning and is still spinning the same information that hormones are going to cause breast cancer and all of this. So we need to push back and stop that. How did that come about? The first female director of the NIH, National Institute of Health, was Dr. Bernadine Healy in the 90s. And even though there was plenty of observational data that hormones help, there wasn't a clinical trial. So she said, okay, let's do it. But then, she took such a big step ahead for women's health. An almost $700 million study was going to be done on women's health, and that was great. But then what ended up happening was that I don't know if it was her or who else, they put a man in charge of that study. Dr. Jacques Rousseau got put in charge of that study, and Dr. Rousseau had already published articles such like "It is time to stop the HRT bandwagon." So to me, it feels like he was biased before he became the head of the study. And he was just looking for, I don't know, uh, the smallest reason to shut the study down. It feels like that's what happened. Now, I haven't been able to find like all the details and research and all of that, but it feels like if somebody publishes this article and says it's time to stop the HRT bandwagon, and you put them in charge of the study, and then they stop the study early and publish results that are statistically insignificant and create such a huge fear of hormones, not only in women, but in their prescribing doctors. And then, of course, doctors now, a whole generation of doctors has not been educated on how to help women through menopause. So a huge travesty has happened, and plenty of people are working to undo the damage, but it's going to take a lot more time and a lot more effort for that to happen. Regarding the second big question about do women choose incorrectly when they are not on their natural hormones, I don't know actually the research on that. I've heard some anecdotal evidence on that, that when you are on contraception, you may end up picking a mate that is not indeed actually right for you. So I don't know exactly about that, but what I will tell you is this. Um, a lot of relationship breakups and divorces happen in when women are in their 40s and 50s. That is a time when women really, I see them, as happened in my case, coming into my own and not standing for things that don't serve them anymore. So part of the reason is also that we lose our hormones and we lose the bandwidth to take things that don't work for us, right? I wonder if every woman was educated about hormones and transitioned smoothly into bioidentical hormones, or this transition was well managed, how would what would be the impact in our personal life, in on our mental emotional health, and by extension the health of relationships, whom we choose and whom we do not, what kind of bonds we form and how we do not, how we live in community and how we don't. We don't know because that hasn't been done. So over the next several years and decades, we will have more data on this. But I will say this, that the line between psychological, physiological, and hormonal is very blurry. When you don't have hormones on board, and this includes your thyroid hormone, your insulin, your cortisol, your melatonin, these other hormones as well. If all those hormones, including your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, are not well balanced, you're not fully able to be your most um, optimal self. And that's why we are here and having this conversation.
I love this conversation, and it's one that needs to be had every other month just to get everybody to have this paradigm shift, because it took me a while to get there to realize, oh my gosh. In fact, I had a client who's a functional medicine doctor who told me that years ago, and I didn't fully like jump on board. Now I'm like totally into doing something because I was afraid. And that's the challenge, is that they create this misinformation, the fear, and then the lack of activity for people who would normally do something different. And I just hope and pray that the situation doesn't get worse with everything we have going on in our medical system and the people in charge. But we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to dive into brain health, dating with confidence at any age, and how matchmakers can better support clients going through these transitions. So don't go anywhere.
Have you ever felt called to help others find love? You might have the heart for matchmaking, but without the right training, turning that passion into a thriving business can feel impossible. Most matchmaking courses give you outdated theories and a certificate, but no real world strategy to build a successful business. That's where Love Pro Mastermind Academy is different. Our live Done With You training goes beyond theory, helping you develop matchmaking expertise, implement sales and marketing strategies, and master the art of client success. With expert led instruction, accountability, and a community of like minded professionals, you'll learn how to identify your niche, attract high quality clients, create a seamless matchmaking process, grow a sustainable, profitable business. With over a decade of experience, we don't just train matchmakers, we create leaders in the industry. Are you ready to become an LPMA certified matchmaker and build a business that changes lives? Apply today at lovepromastermind.com.
We talk a lot about decision making and confidence in dating. How does hormone health affect our cognitive clarity?
The brain has estrogen receptors and progesterone receptors and testosterone receptors. When we lose these hormones, these receptors aren't getting what they need, and thus the health of the brain is impacted. Our thinking, our cognition, our ability to temperature control, our ability to sleep through the night, our ability to balance our overall brain and body gets impacted in a big way. So, in the absence of hormones, our ability to think clearly, feel our best goes away, right? There's a reason why women are diagnosed with dementia at almost twice the rates of men. It's because we lose our hormones at midlife. Dementia is not a disease of old age, it's a disease of midlife. It just gets diagnosed in old age. So, what a lot of women complain about is brain fog. The symptoms of brain fog are very difficult to tell apart from early symptoms of dementia. So, what you have to watch out for is, do your symptoms get better when you rest? Because sometimes it's just stress. You haven't slept enough, and you have not been on hormones, and your nutrition is not the best. Perhaps you have a huge load of environmental toxins, which, by the way, all of us have, right? Perhaps your gut health, your digestive health isn't so great, and there's a direct connection between your brain and your gut. Perhaps your heart health isn't that great, because as soon as you lose your hormones, you lose your estrogen at midlife, there is a stepwise increase in your cholesterol and blood pressure. So there is an impact to global systems, especially the brain, right at midlife. So, what you want to do is know what are the risk factors for brain health and do your best to minimize those, right? First of all, you want to make sure you're eating well, you're exercising regularly, you have a good support network, you have good stress management strategies, you're getting proper sleep at night, you are on bioidentical hormones. Okay, this is the starting point. And after this, you have to figure out, do some testing for, are you carrying a toxin load? What is your gut health like? Do you have any heavy metals or mold toxins and all of that? You test all of that. If that comes back positive, you start to detox and do all the actions that are needed. If your blood pressure is elevated, and despite using your hormones, you're not getting the benefit that you need, then we need to do something for your heart health. Because if you have heart disease, you have brain disease. So we need to understand all the different things that impact your brain and take proactive corrective action to change that. It is doable. It feels like a lot. Suddenly, when it's coming to you as like, okay, this person is out there and telling you all these things, it feels overwhelming. But there is a way to do this in a way that fits into your life. And the first time you do this testing or you learn about this stuff, it feels new. But as you do this, it becomes second nature. And this is how we have to live in this world going forward because the burden of chronic disease is high, right? The instances of cancer, the instance of dementia, the instance of long COVID, the instance of all kinds of immune dysfunction are high. So educating yourself and then taking some of these actions. And there are people like me and other doctors that are helping women educate them on their brain health and hormonal health, right? These two things are super important. So learn from them and take the actions in your own life on a daily basis to do that. It's possible, it's doable. Um, and you want to make sure you know what to look out for. So if you have brain fog, that doesn't go away with adequate rest. with proper sleep through the night, with when your stress is managed, then you know there is something to investigate. Then reaching out to somebody that can actually help you do the right investigation. And you also have to reach out to people who believe in a model of medicine where you find the root cause and you work to reverse that. You
Yeah.
don't want to work with somebody who tells you to wait until you get a diagnosis and then they put you on a drug that just maintains your condition and does nothing to help you improve your quality of life or reverse that condition. Right? So, brain fog is super important. If you have somebody who's feeling this way, unclear, unable to make decisions, not able to concentrate, first thing to do is make sure you don't have sleep apnea. It's not uncommon, right? You want to make sure you're sleeping through the night, you don't have sleep apnea, you're eating well, you're exercising. And if the symptoms of brain fog still continue, then it would be hard to think about dating and all these other things. So it's super important to be proactive about your health. And I'm telling you, I have women in my practice that are in their 60s and 70s, okay, were not feeling great. They were beginning to give up on life. And when you teach them what they have to do and how to do it, they come back and are living vibrant lives. And there is no reason for being despondent or disappointed or anything. It's new kind of work, but it's totally doable, you know. And once you have your brain back, you feel confident,
Yeah.
you feel beautiful, and
I
you
was just about to say,
yeah.
confidence it's a brain thing, right? And if you're feeling depleted, drained, you're in a certain age group where you have children, you have a household, maybe you own a business, you got a million things going on, and you want to date because you want to have that special someone in your life. Meanwhile, you're so overwhelmed you can't even deal with it. And as you were talking, I'm thinking maybe women need to create like little pods of friends that sort of like make sure that you make those appointments, because I know myself, like making an appointment is a task in and of itself. And then also I think matchmakers need to have someone like you as a go-to person to send their clients when they're in this state, because matchmakers really learn a lot about their clients and find out a lot of things and do refer. And when I was a matchmaker, I always had a team of experts that I would refer people to, because we want to support them, because everything involves everything. When you're dating, all the stuff that's going on in your life is also going to have an impact on your relationships.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us a little bit about the Aruna method. What is it and how does it work? And tell us about the work that you're doing, because I think this is amazing. And I'm gonna have to go to California to go work with you.
I would love to talk about the Aruna method. The Aruna method is the way I care for the men and women that I work with. And what that entails is, one, it's relationship based medicine. It's healthcare, health and well-being that's delivered over a period of time, because health is not a transaction. Getting from your current state to a state of complete health is a transformation, right? And that's how you rebuild yourself from the inside out. That's how you make sure you have the confidence to show up as your completely fully expressed self in the world. When you're feeling good, when you feel good, you show up as yourself, right? And how to do that, that's the way I deliver care through Aruna method. Is there is a doctor like me who acts not only as your doctor, but also as a coach. So when we work together over a period of about 9 months, we are working on not just your internal body systems, but also your desire and your motivation to continue working, because we all know how easy it is to give up on things when it gets a little bit challenging. So keeping people motivated and keeping eyes on the goal. Eyes on the goal. This is what we are going to, this is where we are, and we are driving straight there. There are ups and downs, but this is the way I work with women to make sure we get to the end point where we planned together. And so I use functional medicine, to check all your body systems, your gut health, your toxins, your brain, your heart, all of that. So, this is a comprehensive way to deliver care in a way that you feel you have a relationship with your doctor and you can bring your concerns to the doctor and be able to have this two-way communication. It's really, I feel like, my version of 21st century medicine. It's not somewhere where the doctor is the authority figure and only gives you a prescription and off you go and manage everything on your own. um, the focus is to teach you about your body and teach you about health so you can live your healthy self and you can teach your children to be healthy and your partner to be healthy and your friends to be healthy. So it's kind of like creating these little on the ground network of women that know how to take care of themselves and they can inspire other women to do the same. And I absolutely agree that having each other to lean on,
Mhm.
right? Because loneliness is the other big epidemic in the world today,
Big.
right? A huge epidemic. And social media is not helping. And online, whatever options are available are not helping. So I would love to take this opportunity to tell people to get out there and meet in real life. It is so good. Throw those phones away. Well, no, okay, don't throw them. But like, plan to meet in person and physical touch. Physical touch is so important. I am such a believer in a hug, like a long hug. Even with your girlfriend or with your guy friends, a long hug is so therapeutic. So therapeutic. So believing in like in our healing touch, like if I touch you, if I give you a hug and a long hug, you both of us feel the benefit. Like we exhale, our body goes into parasympathetic and relaxes. So all of that we need to do it for each other.
I love everything you shared, and the concept of by helping women with their health, they then spread the love and the support, because men who are married live longer because their wives take care of them. And so if you have a woman who's already educated, taking care of herself, she has the energy, the strength and desire, and also is able to help her family, the children. We're big influencers as females. But you touched on something like that is near and dear to my heart, which is the loneliness epidemic, and it's why I do the work that I do. And I feel like people are so disconnected today that they're almost awkward to be like in person. It's like everybody's just behind that, they have that keyboard courage, and they're quick to respond and text and interact, electronically. But then when they're in person, it's this weird awkward thing. And to your point, like I'm, a physical touch person anyway. I'm a hugger. And it's so important. And yeah, and I'm glad that you're saying that, because it does release hormones and things into your body that are also healthy and helpful.
Yeah. I
And
also want to say this one more thing, if I can, Arlene, is like, I if we find the one person, like in your profession, right, matchmaking, everybody's looking for the match, and that's great. If that happens, that's wonderful. But what I also have begun to do now in my own life is like collecting friends,
Mhm.
cultivating deep friendships. So putting all our eggs in the relationship basket, I feel like might be risky. I would love it if all of us could get lucky. That would be great. And yet, just the couple, just by themselves, because they also need more support. You right? More friendships, deeper friendships, more communication, more real talk,
Yeah.
right? That would be so amazing.
Yeah, and from a healthy standpoint, if you have a significant other, you both should have your own lives too. I mean, I have a whole set of friends that are my friends and colleagues, and my husband has his stuff that he does, his golf and whatever. And then we come together and we're always making new friends. He's an extrovert, I'm an ambivert, so I need my alone time every so to kind of like re-energize, but he could be out there. And so we're always making friends, and that is really, really important. And I was just talking about this study at Harvard that's been going on for over 80 years. The friendships that you make are going to help you into old age and help you age, healthier, and there's just so many benefits. And yeah, this loneliness epidemic is a real problem. But I want to talk about something that you have to offer, which is the brain health score. It's the Center for Cognitive Resilience.com / brain health score. And we will add it to the show notes. And it scared the hell out of me because, oh my God, you'll see it because I put in my email, I'm at high risk.
Hmm.
And we're having this conversation today because I like to invite people to talk to them about the things that I need, that I'm interested in, that I need to learn and take some action, because my
Right.
scores were horrendous, and it was everything that you talked about.
Yeah.
um, just not sleeping, probably have a little sleep apnea because I snore only when I'm overweight, which I am right now. A lot of stress. I have a 93-year-old mom who moved in with me this year, and that's caused a lot of stress in my life, and just a lot of a bigger responsibility of having to cook every meal and do everything, which is, again, what I'm talking about, is that women have to take on all that stuff too, in addition to running my companies and doing everything, and probably not taking care of myself as I should. So I actually had a conversation with my daughter, who'll be 37, and I said, we're going to be partners. I'm going to make your appointments, you're going to make my appointments, and let's keep each other healthy, because I think women tend to do that. They're in this quagmire of, like, you're not feeling well, you're fatigued, you're whatever, and that kind of exacerbates by not doing anything about it because you're too tired to do anything about it. And so, yeah.
You are saying the story of so many ambitious, high achieving women
Yeah.
because um, you see, the drain on our health is not visible to the world. It's only visible to us, but if only if we heed it, and we don't. We don't heed it. We will keep going. We will keep pushing this machinery, this one machinery that's been given to us. We will push it until it breaks, and then we will do something about it. And it needs to be the other way around, because imagine if you had full energy, if you were sleeping through the night, right? If all your hormones were optimized and all your body systems were a go, imagine what you could bring to your work, to your companies, to your relationships, to everything. Just imagine, right? And that's what I want every woman and man to think about: where you are today and where in your mind do you think you could be if your health was a 10 on 10.
Yeah.
Work on that today, right? Don't wait until it is too late. Don't wait for things to get worse before you act on them, because just a year from now you could be in completely different health and be, firing on all cylinders, not just getting from day to day, but like jumping and leaping and, running through your life, doing all the things that you want to do. So this is too common. I have been guilty of this, of doing this in my past also, but then I got a pretty big lesson, and I learned from it. And I learned from it that self-care is not a negotiable thing. Self-care is where it's at.
Yeah, I'm convinced, and I'm making that commitment today because, as you mentioned, you work with high achieving women. I've always been the type of person that I don't let on what's going on, but as I sit here, I have broken ribs, a broken thumb, stitches in my head. And people look at me, I've had conversations today because I'm back to work. My foot is messed up from a fall that I had, and people are like, you just got out of the hospital a few days ago, and you're because that's what we do. We just have to keep it moving, keep things going, and it's so important, to your point about self-care is not selfish, because if you can't put your mask on, how the heck are you going to help everybody else? So
I just
thank you.
want to say one more thing. Yeah, one more thing. You talked about the ribs and the bones and all that, and I haven't touched on bone health.
Mm,
Osteopenia and osteoporosis are really big concerns for women. And the fastest rate of bone loss that women experience is actually not even after menopause. We begin to experience fast bone loss when we are going 3 months without a period, which is still during perimenopause. Okay, so in the absence of estrogen and progesterone, we cannot rebuild bone. But our medical system is set up that they will do a DEXA scan only at 65, at least 15 years after when you've already begun to lose bone density. So the medical system is not set up to create health for us. That's not its job. Its job is only to keep us from dying, no matter how miserable we are, right? So they will keep us on some drugs and we will be on a cocktail of drugs in our 70s and 80s. That's not what we want. We want to live as healthy and as fully with vibrance until whatever age we are going to live. And then, it's a quick whatever the reason that we die, but we don't want to live with chronic illness declining over decades,
Yeah.
right? So for bone health, you cannot really do that in the absence of hormones. And second, the brain health quiz, I wanted to tell you, I'm glad you took it. It's not a diagnostic test. I'm not diagnosing you with anything based on that test, that assessment. What that assessment is doing is just telling you that when you have symptoms like this, it's time to take action. There is no diagnosis, right? There are diagnostic tests that are validated that would be recommended to you if you decided to take some action on that. And, but this is an informational quiz, but it helps you think about things. In the same way, I also have a menopause quiz on my website. Okay, and I can send you the link for that as well. So women can learn about what are the symptoms, okay, and what is the extent of the impact on their health. And, generally when they have any symptoms, it's time to take action. But there is, a categorization where I say, okay, if you have only this much, it's still manageable. And there's a moderate and then there's a high burden category. So I can send you a list for that as well. So if you want to share that in your show notes.
I would love that. And, this is such a timely conversation. And I think that we need to do this again and talk about men's, hormones too, because this is not, women, of course, have an enormous issue out there of just learning and getting their practitioners to learn and dealing with the problem without the usual standard of care of just here's a drug that's going to fix this and mess this up. And we've become so desensitized when we hear the symptom, the effects of a drug when you're listening to a commercial, and it's like it's
Yeah.
so easy.
Yes, it's amazing that this is how we advertise our drugs to the general population. It's amazing to me. But for men, I will say that yes, of course, for them also, midlife is a big deal. Their hormones also begin to decline in their 40s. It's just not as deep as we experience it, but it's definitely there. And for me, the big thing is also like the mental, emotional health for men and the loneliness epidemic and how it impacts them and how they are socialized and how they grow up and the impact that all of that has on the relationships they form with women. So I feel like all of this is interrelated and connected.
Absolutely. And we just want to make the world a better place and get men and women to reconnect if, in a heteronormative sense, if, I'm not speaking about all types of relationships, but I think that there's a huge disconnect and a huge divide right now. And I would love to see that change for the better. And I'm hoping and praying and doing everything that I can, and having you on and talking about this topic is part of that solution. And Dr. Manna, thank you so much for joining us today. This conversation has been eye-opening and empowering, and not just for the matchmakers and the dating professionals, but for anyone who cares about women's well-being. And to all the listeners, share this episode with a woman in your life or a man who loves a woman. Let's spread this truth and bring vitality back to midlife. And as always, visit lovepromastermind.com if you're ready to build your matchmaking business the ethical and empowered way. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Matchmaker Mentor podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.